trying to log on from a different location.
Okay. Well, we have one attorney, and that's good enough for us. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this meeting, and I will call this meeting to order. We will begin by asking for an approval of the agenda. I hear anyone who wishes to make a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Martin. Are there any questions from the commissioners about the agenda as it has been published? Are there any questions from the public about the agenda as it has been published? And folks, there's about a 30-second, I think we've narrowed it down to about a 30-second delay between our feed and when the folks on YouTube hear this. So when we go to public comment, you're going to hear me remind our listeners of that and try to kill about 30 seconds to make sure that we let anybody make a comment that needs to. Dallas, do we have anybody raising their hand to make a comment on approval of the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call, and I'm going to try to keep you guys in order tonight. Commissioner Martin? I have an aye. Commissioner Coleman?
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley?
Aye.
Commissioner Norfleet?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. And folks, if you are trying to watch and it's asking for a password, Dallas, what advice could we give to the folks who are trying to get in and the link is saying they need a password?
If they need a password, use
996649.
$996649.
996649. Okay, 996649. If it shouldn't ask you for a password, but just in case it does, that would be the one. And with that, I will ask for a pledge, for the invocation. Commissioner McKinley is going to take off his commissioner hat and put on his pastor hat. If you would, please bow your heads. After the invocation, we will rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor McKinley.
Let's pray. Father, I thank you, Lord, for the opportunity that we have tonight. Lord, I'm asking for you to give us your divine wisdom. Lord, this commission needs your wisdom. And so, Lord, I'm just praying right now that you would guide every step. Lord, Newberry, we declare it for your glory. And so tonight, Lord, we want it to operate in the freedom that you have given us, Lord. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
If you would, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that slide there, Dallas. Everybody can participate in the pledge with us. We really only have, that's going to move us to our agenda item. Thank you, Pastor Rocky. If you could put your commissioner hat back on now, we'd appreciate that. We really only have one item on the agenda tonight, and before we get into a discussion of the state of Florida's executive order, I just want to, and the county's executive order, I want to thank the commissioners for coming together on such short notice. And I want to thank our staff for coming together on such short notice. I'm sure that your cell phones and emails like mine blew up yesterday with questions about what was going on. Businesses who have been following the governor's order and preparing all weekend to follow the governor's order saw that change in the morning on Tuesday and saw it change again in the evening Tuesday night, and it created an awful lot of confusion. And I think that our constituents, our residents and businesses appreciate the fact that you guys are willing to come together, have a meeting, and let us try to bring some reason and calm to this situation. Try to explain what's going on, explain where we are right now, explain what the law is right now. And then I think we would like to have a conversation about what Newberry can do to keep that stability and calm going. We all know that this pandemic is chaos and crisis and fear enough by itself. And we don't want to be an entity that adds to that situation. I think our residents look to us for a reasonable response to address all kinds of crises and everyday issues. And that's what we're being asked for right now. So again, thank you all for coming to have this conversation so that our residents can hear your voices about what's going on and hear your thoughts straight from you instead of filtered through me or what people think that you think. And I think what I would like to do is first ask our city manager. Mike, are you in? Yep, there you are. I'd like you, if you would just give us a short summary. We don't need the backstory of the flip-flop and everything that happened, but where did we land yesterday? And give us a summary of what businesses in Newberry today, under the current Alachua County order, how do they need to plan? What do they need to be doing? What is the current law?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
First of all, is my volume is working properly. Mr. Mayor, as you know, this has, as you stated, it's been a very fluid situation. The last update from the state came Friday. The county responded with an amendment on Sunday and then amended that amendment. I mean, that they responded with an order on Sunday and then amended that order on Monday. In brief, the things that we are following the state's order. Those businesses are open, which are essential businesses, plus fitness centers, gyms, and there was a relaxation on food establishment, retail establishment, museums and libraries, also barbers, hair salons, and cosmetology salons were opened within the last week. So businesses can operate at, according to the state, 50% of their retail space. So Alachua County's order is the same as the state's, essentially, with two exceptions. Businesses are allowed to open with one person every 500 square feet, and residents are required to wear face masks in public when social distancing indoors and when social distancing cannot be achieved.
Mike, are we sure? Because I know that part of the confusion yesterday was the compromise that the city of county made on the fly was to accept the 50% occupancy of the state, and as if the county would re-implement the face mask. Did they end up back at the 1 in 500?
Mr. Mayor, it is, as you said, it is confusing, but it is my understanding, I've got the press release right here in front of me. Where the county landed is businesses are limited to one customer per 500 square feet. Oh, and now go to 50% occupancy. I'm sorry, my apologies. So businesses follow the state order, which is now 50% occupancy, but the face masks are mandatory.
Okay, does the commission have any questions about the current order that we're operating under? Because it is confusing and it had changed multiple times. But let's just make sure we understand, the commission understands the current order. Any questions for staff about what that means for Newberry businesses, how they can operate? And Mike, I didn't hear you mention churches in there. Could you just briefly say what the county's position on churches and if that's a different position than the state's position?
Mr. Mayor, the governor's order does not speak to churches. He has said all along that he was going to leave it up to churches to implement social distancing, but there are no restrictions from the state. The county has always taken the position that that churches should follow the person per square foot guideline or requirement that is in place. So initially that was 1 per 1,000, and now it would be 1 per 500. As I understand, that's the county's position on how churches are allowed to operate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. Any questions from the dais on the current order? Okay, so that that takes us, I guess, into a conversation now of what is, does the commission have any ideas? Commission have any thoughts on how we can protect our residents from this constant barrage of uncertainty and confusion? I think that's, the request that I got the most yesterday, and the frustration that I heard the most yesterday and personally felt yesterday was that thought. And, just as some context here, the county has been communicating with the municipalities. They hold a managers and mayors meeting twice a week. They have since the beginning of this, when they failed to talk to any other municipality in the county other than the city of Gainesville, when they decided to shut the county down. If you remember, I'm sure we all have vivid memories of that moment of finding out that the county was in lockdown without having gotten an email, a heads up, a seat at the table. Since then, the county has done a pretty good job of at least communicating with us and providing us an opportunity. So on Friday, we got the county's executive order, emergency order. We all gave feedback. 5 municipalities that I know of, the city of Newberry, the city of High Springs, Alachua, Archer, and Hawthorne, all responded to the county's request for feedback, asking that the mask mandate be a should and not a shall. The smaller municipalities around the county have lower population densities, we're more rural, we're more spread out. And we felt that that would give any other municipality the ability to enact a more rigid regulation if that municipality wanted to. And it looked like on Tuesday that the county had agreed with that. And then Tuesday night, the city of Gainesville was able, in a 3-hour, 4-hour marathon session, to, I would characterize it as bully and badger the BOCC into flip-flopping and going back on that. What is interesting about that is that the city of Gainesville really didn't need to do that. The city of Gainesville could just have enacted a mask ordinance on its own city if it felt that that wasn't appropriate for its constituents. Instead, what they felt was the need to push the county's hand to push all the other municipalities' hands. And I think that one of the most frequent questions I got yesterday was, who's really in charge now? Is the Alachua County governing the county, or is the city of Gainesville governing the county? And I think that's an important question to ask, because all of the questions that Newberry has asked over the course of this pandemic, they've really been about the procedure. They've been about how we're going about this. I think this board has expressed that a certain level of discomfort with how far out on a limb government has gone to protect citizens. And so if you're going to be that far out on a limb, I think it's reasonable to ask some good questions and wait for the answers before you respond. So we've asked questions, and that's what we are continuing to do, is who is really in charge here? Because 5 municipalities expressed their desire and the county went that way. And then within a matter of hours after one municipality expressed the opposite desire, they went back. So it has led to a lot of thoughts out here about who's in charge. It's led to a lot of thoughts out here about, what can Newberry do to protect ourselves from other municipalities in this county that aren't content with just ruling their own municipality. So again, my original question after all that backstory is thoughts and ideas from our board on what Newberry can do to help lessen this anxiety that all of our residents are feeling, not from the pandemic, that's anxiety enough, but from now this back and forth and confusion and chaos that's coming out of government. Commissioner Coleman.
Is this echoing? Is it too bad?
Hang on, I will try it now.
All right. Well, when this originally happened, pretty much put out there on social media that we were going to follow the guidelines. Now, this was me, that we were following the guidelines of the state. And it's like it has progressively turned into power and overreach from our county commission, and now / from the other night, last night, the city commission. My question, I do have a question. My question is, can we change our emergency ordinance, whatever we have here, it's every 7 days, to just somewhere in there put verbiage that we are, I don't even know if we need to even mention the county, that we are going to go by the county
The governor.
guidelines, the government, excuse me, state guidelines?
I think that's a reasonable question. Anybody who has followed Newberry's stance from the beginning, we have said from the start that in order to reduce the confusion and in order to have a unified approach, we should try to follow the governor's order. The governor himself, when he released his first phase 1 reopening, asked counties not to go more stringent, asked counties to follow his order, which led to our last question about what was Newberry supposed to do. It seems to me that that's a reasonable question to ask. If Newberry writes a resolution and adopts the governor's order, now we have an order that is in conflict, but it is an order that is unified with the vast majority of the state. I guess that question should go to Scott or Rich. Rich, Scott, what the commission is asking is, what do we need to do to be able to solidify and unify the city of Newberry with the governor's order and to follow the governor's order?
Well, I think, Mr. Mayor, as we've talked about before, Section 252 of the Florida statute, which is really what we're running under, provides for a framework that the state and cities and counties follow. And what it provides for is that there can be declared a state of emergency, and it identifies the counties, local governments, including cities, have to, of course, follow the governor's order. Now, where it becomes more interesting is when a county determines, in cooperation or collaboration with the state of Florida Division of Emergency Management, decides to be more restrictive than the state, are they authorized to do so? And under 252, that section of the statute, they can't be less restrictive, but they have to work in conjunction with the Division of Emergency Management of the state, but they are allowed to be more restrictive. So the question is, can you opt out of the county ordinance or the county resolution? And that's where the difficulty comes, Mr. Mayor. So you can't just say, okay, we're going to follow the governor and ignore what the county resolution provides, if that helps answer that question.
But Newberry could pass a resolution that says we have every intention of following the governor's order, and then seek, we're dealing with a little feedback here. And then, seek the protection of the governor in writing, with a letter to the governor asking him to limit the power, take a look at what's happening here in Alachua County.
I think you're absolutely entitled to politically ask that question of the governor and the Division of Emergency Management. So you can answer that question, yes. You can request the governor's assistance, and that this is not in collaboration or in keeping with the Division of Emergency Management as provided by the state. I think you're entitled to ask that question or make that request of the state government, yes.
Okay, and I think Commissioner Martin, were you trying to get did I say hand up?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the attorney's point is well taken. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me all right? Wave if you can hear me, Jordan. I don't know if you can hear me or not. Okay, I'm all right. Well, the city attorney's point is well taken, but what I think we have fallen into is a situation where we have the tail wagging the dog. I would be more comfortable if I didn't feel like it was the city of Gainesville that was actually driving the bus here. And, quite frankly, the mayor of Gainesville is not the authority over the citizens of Gainesville. Our citizens deserve, and I think they are entitled to stability. I think our citizens deserve and are entitled to clarity. I think that we need to take the opportunity to try and provide that for them, and by extension, their businesses as well. I have no problem just kind of shifting gears here. Obviously, the county can't make up its mind. We don't have jurisdiction by the city of Gainesville. I don't have any problem with effectively aligning with the governor until they can kind of figure out what they're doing over at the county. And although the attorney's advice is well taken, I'm perfectly okay with passing a resolution. I'm perfectly okay with changing the emergency order that's in place right now, and then let the county bring up its objections to us if they would like. But the governor has been much more clear, and I think it provides what our citizens and by extension their businesses are entitled to, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Martin. And I think Commissioner Martin's point is well taken as well. I have real procedural questions with what happened yesterday. At a publicly announced meeting, the county set this county on one path. And granted, the joint meeting between them and Gainesville was a publicly announced meeting, but the questions were already answered. And so people who waited for 3 and 4 hours on the county's meeting went about their day and then had to find out later that we went in a different direction. I think it would have been much more prudent for the BOCC to say to the city of Gainesville, if you feel this way, you are free to enact a more rigid ordinance and do what you think is best for your constituents. And we are happy to hold another meeting and reconsider the issue. But they didn't do that. Even when they were prompted, and I listened to public comment, even when they were prompted, and I think I counted at least 4 times by residents that before they changed direction, they should at least consult with the other municipalities. They still made no effort to do that. So I think Commissioner Martin's point is well taken. I think that our residents deserve that stability and clarity, which I think we have gotten from the governor's office. Agree or disagree, it's been very measured and it's been very clear. Commissioner Martin, I don't want to cut you off.
Well, just to jump in also, I watched the county's meeting and they couldn't even decide among themselves what was happening during their meeting. It was very kind of jumpy, and I think Commissioner Wheeler even at one point had to stop and just say, okay, what are we talking about again? And I just don't think our citizens need to be subjected to that, and anything that we can do to help alleviate the stress that they're already under in any way, shape, or form, I think is prudent. We stand kind of as the last line of defense for these citizens. And I don't want the governor, I don't want the government even dealing with my health care. I think that's between me and my doctor. The only health that I want the county or any government at any level, the only health I want them to be protecting is the health of our republic. And they're just not doing a very good job of that right now. So I'll get off my soapbox. I think I've made my point, but just as a matter of point, they can't seem to understand or decide amongst themselves. They're just kind of sticking their finger in the air and seeing which way the wind blows. And like you said, the city of Gainesville just kind of bullied them into the situation yesterday. And I'm really sorry. I apologize to the citizens of Newberry that we're even in the place where we are right now.
Coleman.
I totally agree with Commissioner Martin on everything he said there. Personally, I wear a mask every day to work. I don't want to intimidate anybody, with this healthy body. And everybody's seeing that, when I walk in the office and stuff. And so I have no problem wearing a mask. The problem I do have is the city of Gainesville and our county has totally made this political. So either Tim or whoever, but I'm ready right now to make the change on it and pass a resolution. So.
Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner McKinley.
I know some of you are probably waiting to see where I'm at on this, and I've thought about this long and hard, and I've never been more disappointed than I was yesterday with our commission. And it's not so much where we ended up; it's how we ended up there. Anything with two heads, they say, is a freak, and I'm afraid that I watched that in action yesterday, and it's not fair to our citizens. You know, as far as I'm concerned, the state of Florida and our governor's office, they have the right information, or at least they're attempting to get the right information. And I trust their sources a whole lot more than I trust the circus that I watched yesterday. And I just don't have any faith in that at all. And I don't know what this means for us. And if Alachua County, should we choose to go this direction, if they want to ask that we comply, then I think they need to sit down with the commissioners of Newberry and our mayor, and we need to have a conversation with them, just like the city of Gainesville. I am not comfortable with Gainesville having that much pull in the decisions over Newberry. I want to have faith in Alachua County and the Board of Commissioners. I don't have that faith right now. And it's not that I don't think that we need guidelines. I do. I think we need guidelines. I think there needs to be a plan in place, but I think that the state has that plan, and that's why I'm willing to go that direction. And so the only thing that I just want to just kind of caution the commission on, I still stand by what I said last week. I want us to be careful with our emergency order, just because of what that means for our citizens. And so I just don't want to take anything away from our citizens, any line of protection that we have there. But as far as us, us deciding to follow the state guidelines, I'm all for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kinley. And again, I want to reiterate, because I've had a couple of emails and phone calls in the past since we announced this meeting to have this conversation, that have accused Newberry of adding to the chaos, that have said that we've flip-flopped and been wishy-washy. And I just want to take a minute to respond to that, because I think Commissioner McKinley, hinted at it at least. And I want to remind everyone that the city of Newberry's stance has been the same from the beginning to the end. We have said, as a body, we need to adhere to the governor's order, and we need to try to cooperate and be a unified front to reduce the chaos. We are a border town with another county. When one county does one thing and another county does something else, it adds to the chaos. When you couple that with the level of chaos that we saw inside our own county yesterday, I believe that rises to the level of public harm. I've heard the BOCC. I've listened to every meeting that they've had, every single multi-hour meeting that they've had. I've been on the line listening to those conversations. They've expressed a lot of concern about the mental health issues that have come with the quarantine, with the pandemic. And I agree. I'm a teacher. I see that happening every day with my students. So I agree that there are severe and serious mental health issues here. That's why I'm very passionately would argue that we need to not add to that anxiety. They need to hear calmness. They need to hear reason and rationality from us. And, it is also true that when you listen to the BOCC's meetings, almost every time there's some comment that calls into question the governor's medical advice based on political party, based on his affiliations. I don't find that helpful at all. We are not doctors up here. The governor is an elected person. He's got a team of experts from around the state helping him. And it doesn't do any good for us to engage in conspiracy theories about what's going on. You know, I think if we want to ask for everybody to be unified, we have to show it, and we have to try to work for it and strive for it. And that's why I would support saying that we're going to align ourselves with the governor's order, because we can't quite get clarity out of anything else. So in order to have that unified front, there's only one effort right now towards that unification, and that I want to be a part of that effort. Commissioner Farnsworth, did I see a hand come up? It's kind of hard to tell. Were you trying to weigh in on this conversation?
A while back, but anyhow, I agree with Commissioner McKinley about what he said, and I think going forward, I think we need to be following what the governor's office has come out with and stay with them. And even though there is a so-called requirement to wear a mask in public, if you go out in public, maybe 25% of the people are actually wearing the mask, so it's not being enforced anyhow. So I don't know that it makes a difference one way or the other. People are going to pretty much do what they want to. Personally, when I go out in public, I wear a mask, but I'm in the healthcare profession. I'm around people that have to deal with the virus, so I have to be more careful. And I don't, as far as I'm concerned, we just can go with what the governor has proposed.
Mr. Norfleet, you're the only one we haven't heard from. Do you have anything to add to that conversation, or do you think we've hit all the relevant points?
I think we've hit most all the relevant points. If we go with the governor's recommendation, we'll just we'll be planning on staying with the government recommendations until we decide not to down the road, whenever this thing's kind of settled down and back to normal.
I think that's a good question. In my mind, that would be every time we pass an emergency order, it would simply be a mirror of the governor's order. So when the governor updates it or amends his order, we would amend it the same. And as soon as the governor lifts his order and says that the emergency order is over, we would lift ours, which again has been Newberry's stance from the very beginning. Commissioner Norfleet?
I think that would be pretty clear for the businesses in Newberry, because like you said yesterday, you know, they gear up for one thing that the county commission did, and then later on have to change what they was planning on doing because they changed their government later in the day. So
Yeah.
that's all I have, but I'm good with going with the state.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Norfleet. So let me make sure I'm hearing this correctly. This commission would like to authorize our legal team, our authorized staff, to write up a resolution that Newberry intends to follow the governor's order. Our next meeting is on Tuesday. And Mr. Manager, would we be able to bring that resolution back to the commission on Tuesday, that from here on out, Newberry will adhere and obey and comply with the governor's order, and we will update our order every time the governor updates his?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we can work with the city attorney's office, and we will construct the instrument that we think best serves the board's wishes and complies with the regulations of the state of Florida.
Okay, Mr. Walker.
Mr. Mayor, there's several items that have come up in the discussion, and I think warrant at least some ideas. I think there's been some discussion on our board's part to have a relationship with the county such that it is not as conflicted a relationship as perhaps we've had in the past. And one of the things I think you made the point, Mr. Mayor, is that Alachua County is not Gainesville. Gainesville is not Newberry, and we're very different in scope. Our density of citizenry is very different than what downtown Gainesville. And our experience with this pandemic is very different than Gainesville. And perhaps one of the items that we could suggest to the county via resolution. So I think point number one is that legal staff and your management staff bring to you we have a regular meeting. Thank goodness it's not on Memorial Day. We're having it next Tuesday. And so I think your legal staff could report back to you and perhaps have a resolution drafted. And I think one of the resolutions could be directed to the Board of County Commissioners and make the point that you made earlier that, look, our experience is very different than, and we believe as the leadership of the city of Newberry, that we should not be required in the city to have the mask issue implemented in Newberry. We follow all of the governor's requirements, but we believe that you can adopt a emergency order that specifies that Gainesville, their leadership group requests something different than our city commission is, and we believe that provision of your emergency order should be exempted in Newberry and perhaps some of the other smaller cities, High Springs, Archer, and Micanopy. I don't know. They may request the same thing we're requesting. And I think that sends a message to the county that we are trying to work with you in the sense of a very difficult situation for all of us. So that could be an approach. And I think that's something I wanted to follow up on that you had touched on earlier in your discussion, Mr. Mayor, because I think that is a basis for having a different application of a rule that, as again, we've stated, we're just not the same as downtown Gainesville. So I think that could be one part of the direction to city staff if the commissioners and yourself believe that is correct. We would report back to you Tuesday night on several other things. There's legal cases that are now pending. There's one, it's known as Green versus Alachua County. And it's also suing Governor DeSantis. That's set for hearing, I believe, in front of Donna Kime on Friday, Judge Donna Kime. And I don't know how that's going to turn out. It's based upon primarily constitutional grounds. And so it will be interesting to see if the court rules on that matter. The briefings are now being done. And so we can study that case. And if there is a decision by Judge Kime, we can certainly report that back to you as to what her decision is based upon that litigation. There is a federal case that's in front of Judge Walker. And that case, I believe, is set for a hearing on next Tuesday. And again, that is a matter that is based on constitutional argument that this is an overreach on the part of the government to require masks to be worn. I don't think any of those cases, I don't believe so. Now, I need to study the cases and the complaints that have been filed. Interestingly enough, Mr. Mayor, there is a statute, it's 876.12, and that provides that it is illegal to wear a mask in the state of Florida. You can't cover your face, you can't wear a hood that covers your face. And so we have a general law that says you can't do exactly what the executive order, the emergency order from the county is saying that we are required to do. I don't believe that issue is raised by either of those cases I just mentioned. But I think the pandemic and the emergency orders trump the general law under this state of emergency that we're already in. I just note that that's an interesting dilemma in the law, the general law, compared to this special acts that we have at this point in time. Mr. Mayor, there's a couple of other things that I can report on from the legal standpoint. As you probably know, there's cases out in Washington. There's a case in Wisconsin where the governor's order, stay-at-home order, was overturned. The Wisconsin case is based upon procedural grounds primarily. The other cases are more in the realm of the constitutional issues. So these cases are working their way through the court system right now. Certainly we can give you some additional background and information on that. The other point that I wanted to make, that I think that you're directing legal staff and your manager's office to undertake, is to communicate with the governor's office and to perhaps ask questions about this section of the statute 252 that requires the coordination, collaboration between the county division of emergency management and the state division of emergency management, to ensure that that interplay is in fact happening. And why are we, what's the basis specifically in Alachua County for the greater restrictions? And so I think my suggestion, Mr. Mayor, would be to proceed with the 3 items that I've identified, just to summarize very quickly. First item is to prepare a resolution for Tuesday night that requests the county to reconsider their position with respect to the city of Newberry and the requirement for citizens of the city of Newberry to wear a mask in the municipality. So that would be step number 1. Step number 2 is to prepare perhaps a resolution that requests the governor to direct the Office of Emergency Management to coordinate with Alachua County to discern whether there is that level of corporate cooperation as identified by Section 252. And I think that's one of the commissioners had mentioned that as a possibility. Thirdly, to report back to the commission Tuesday night as to these local cases that are now finding their way through both the state and federal system.
Thank you, Mr. Nate. I would, the attorney's comments, getting some feedbacks. The attorney's comments do nothing but make me more uncomfortable with complying and becoming complicit in the county's order. I don't think from the comments that I've heard from the commission that the commission has a problem with 2 or 3, but I think I heard from the commission a desire for number 1 to be a resolution that would draw us in line with the governor's order. And while I take the attorney's point, one of my concerns through this pandemic is that every time Newberry's asked a question, it has taken weeks to get an answer. And it seems like from the state, it seems like, and this is just something that I personally am struggling with. Once you declare a state of emergency, legally, there is almost nothing that the government doesn't have the authority to do. And I'm not comfortable with that constantly being the answer that I get. So I think that our constituents, our city, our residents, they want some comfort and calm right now. I think that bringing a resolution back on Tuesday is perfectly reasonable. I think that doing anything that draws it out much further than that doesn't achieve what I think we have a sworn oath to do, which is to protect our residents under the Constitution and to make sure that they live in a city that they have a reasonable expectation is going to be the same from one day to the next. But if the commission, if I'm wrong on where the commission was, then so be it. We all heard those 3 items. I think the 2 and the 3, I think are interesting. I want to hear back from these court cases and Supreme cases. I think those are all good points and interesting for us to digest as part of this process. What about item 1? Does anyone want to respond? Commissioner Coleman? There you are. You're good. Start talking.
Well, it's something's here. I can't see me.
I got you in the screen.
I totally agree with you. Everything that the attorney, what he has said, Walker, it's number one is imperative that we get it out there now. I bet I manned 35 phone calls yesterday, and I'm ready to go ahead and get this resolution going right now.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Martin?
Is there anything that we can do tonight in the same direction and not have to wait until Tuesday?
Well, in my mind, I guess this commission could just simply make a motion and take a vote that we are going to abide and comply with the governor's order. The governor's order is written, the governor's order is out there. I don't know that until we actually have our own resolution in front of us, I don't know how much teeth that would have. I think you guys could certainly make a statement that that's the direction that we're headed. And Mike, if I'm wrong on that, correct me. But I don't see anything immediately that we can do tonight without having a resolution or the order in front of us, other than just a statement of purpose. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I think that probably the best course of action for us would be to draft our own conflicting state of emergency or emergency order and execute that. I think it's the cleanest. I won't speak to, the things that the city attorney could, but that gives us the immediacy that some of the commission is looking for. And there probably, to my knowledge, there is some basis in state law for cities to manage emergencies in a way that they see fit, and for cities to write ordinances that for city documents that conflict with county documents, for the city ones to take precedence within the city.
And Mr. Manager, I would say, in effect, right now, the only difference, and I'm going to ask the manager to speak to churches because we may have got that one a little bit wrong. Again, confusing situation. The only real difference right now between the county's order and the governor's order is the mask. And the county has already said that municipalities are going to be the ones to enforce the mask. Newberry's position on that is that we are educational. We don't have the resource to do anything else. So in practice, I think you could say we intend to follow the governor's order, and we'll vote on that Monday. And nothing in reality would shift between today and that day. Commissioner Martin?
Well, with all due respect to all of the governing bodies in the county, that's what it is today, and that's what it is right now. But as we clearly saw yesterday, that could change in 3 hours, Mr. Mayor. So it's, I have this welling up inside of me of doing something to quell this right now for the citizens of Newberry. And if we can pass a motion to update the emergency order, you can have it drafted tomorrow and put it in front of you, and I would authorize your signature on that tomorrow.
Mr. Major, as far as I know, this board could take a vote tonight to authorize staff to take the governor's order, change the proper verbiage, and authorize me to sign it at 10 o'clock in the morning, however long it takes to copy and paste that order.
And if it's an effort to create stability, which it is, I don't want to have things in limbo until Tuesday. That is at the speed of which things are changing right now, that is almost forever away. Restaurants need to get in orders that are 2 days out from their suppliers. People are taking appointments. One thing that we didn't discuss is, hey, you mentioned we're a border city with another county that is a whole nother set of rules. We have lots of people going back and forth. We have residents that have fields that they are dealing with over in Gilchrist County, and trying to comply more with the governor. provides that stability. And I really strenuously petition something for tonight for our citizens. I think Tuesday is just way too far away.
Commissioner Coleman and then Commissioner McKinley.
I totally agree with Commissioner Martin on this. Let's get it going tonight. Let's get it over with.
Commissioner McKinley, was that you have your hand up, or did I misread that?
I didn't, but I do want to say something. I'm in agreement with Commissioner Martin here. This is not about face masks for me, and I want to be clear on that. It's how wishy-washy this is, and I agree. In 3 hours, this can change, and our citizens deserve better than that. As I stated, there needs to be guidelines. We are still dealing with COVID-19. However, I am in agreement that we need to be following the governor's order. And if Alachua County, if the BOCC could get on the right page, or get on the same page and just show us some stability there, I wouldn't be having this conversation right now. I just don't have faith in how they are operating. Am I the only one that watches a meeting and at the end of the meeting, I still don't know what they decided, and I have to wait until hours later or the next day to see a report that was written behind closed doors, and that's when I figure out what was said. And for me, I'm uncomfortable with that for our citizens. I did put out a message last night, and I just said, listen, I need some input here. I want to do what's right for Newberry. And every message that I received, every text and every phone call, the citizens are all saying the same thing to me. I'm not saying there's not some citizens out there that will disagree. I just want to make it plain. This is not about face masks to me. This is about stability. And that's what the citizens of Newberry need. And I'm in favor of us go ahead and putting this in action tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would reiterate that. I think I've tried to say that, not as articulately as Commissioner McKinley just did. But to me, this is not about face masks, not about any one issue. The face mask debacle yesterday was simply the lens that allowed us to see behind the curtain that there really is a sincere lack of structure to how our government is operating right now inside this county. And that's a problem for me, because every time we're told we have to do something out here, it's based on a belief and a confidence in the structure of that government. And that completely fell apart yesterday. So this is not about face masks. And I want to be clear, because I've certainly had some, nasty calls today that think that we are trying to open up Newberry and put people's lives at risk. And that is not what any of you have expressed today. Every single one of you have expressed to a desire to abide by the governor's order, to follow those guidelines, which are based on medical expert opinion and advice. And Newberry is not trying to enter into the argument about whether masks work or don't work. We're not trying to enter into the argument about COVID, where it came from and how bad it is. That is not what this is about. This is about having faith in government systems to protect our residents. And one of the things we have to protect them from is anxiety caused by our own actions here. And that's what we're trying to address. So I have 3 commissioners that have expressed an interest for our staff to write up a companion executive emergency order, which will duplicate the governor's order tomorrow and authorize me to sign it. I still would like legal to send that communication to the governor's office. I think that's a good step to take. And I still would like legal to report back to us on Tuesday about the results of some of these lawsuits, not only in our county, but around the country. I think that's important information to have. If Supreme Courts are beginning to find that government, in fact, did not have the authority to do some of these things, then I think that would bear on this body's decision-making as well. And you guys can correct me again if I'm wrong about that. Last comments from any other commissioners about making a motion to have a companion governor's order written for Newberry tomorrow and authorizing me to sign that tomorrow. Any more comments from the commission? Mike, to staff, can you, one, if we made a mistake in our report, on churches, can we correct that? And then does staff have any other comments about the direction we're going?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. Well, and we did make a mistake. It wasn't really a we, it was a me. I stated that that the county enabled churches to operate in a 1 per 500 square feet. I was confused. The county changed that and it was left with 50% capacity. The county's current position, I believe, is that church can operate at 50% of their rated capacity, which does conform with the governor's order.
Mike, is it true that the governor's order never spoke to churches? The governor drew a hard and fast line between the separation of church and state. Is that the case?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. That the governor never stated that churches could not meet or assemble.
You just wanted to confirm that point? Okay, thank you. Okay, any last comment from staff, legal, or the dais before I ask for a motion? Okay, then I need a commissioner to offer that as a motion, and we'll put that on the floor. Commissioner Martin?
So moved.
I think are you muted or we just have a weak connection?
So moved.
Oh, I turned mine down. Sorry.
Oh. No, so moved. And if you need clarification, please let me know.
Okay, I think staff is understanding where we're headed. So I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Coleman. The motion is for the city of Newberry to draft a mirror emergency order to be perfectly in line with the governor's and authorize me to sign that tomorrow morning. Any
Yes, sir.
comments or questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Okay.
I have
Commissioner Norfleet?
this order will be effective immediately after this vote, right?
It would, in effect, it will be effective immediately. I guess technically it won't be effective until I sign it tomorrow morning. And that's just about how, no, it'll be effective immediately.
It won't be available tomorrow morning. It'll be available tomorrow.
As soon as I sign it tomorrow, it will be, but for all intents and purposes, it will be effective upon your vote.
Okay. That way that all the businesses know where we're headed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, and my only last, I meant to bring this up after Scott was talking, Commissioner Cornell, who did at the end of the first meeting yesterday say that the data was showing that masks weren't required, and then decided to on that compromise with the city of Gainesville. He did extend the offer for us to have a joint meeting. And I think that's a good idea. I always think it's a good idea for us to meet and listen to each other. However, I don't think it has any effect on what we have said here tonight. And that was my comment back to him. Newberry expressed what we wanted to see in that order, as did Archer, Hawthorne, High Springs, Alachua, and maybe other cities that I just missed the email. And the BOCC chose to ignore at least 5 of those cities in favor of the opinion of one of those cities. So, if this board and body would like to schedule a joint meeting to have a conversation about this, I'm not discouraging it. I take Commissioner Martin's point that in this world that we live in, every 3 hours in this county, things are changing, and we need to provide that stability to our citizens now. And it might take, days or weeks to schedule up a joint meeting where we can all be there. So I want to make sure before we open it up to public comment, before we take a vote, that the commission is aware that that offer was extended. It was, of course, extended after the fact, but it was extended. And if that has any bearing and you want to hold off on any decision tonight until after that joint meeting, that would certainly be your right. I don't want anybody to think I withheld that information. That was just an oversight by my part. I meant to say it when Scott or Commissioner McKinley was saying. Does that have any effect on anybody's thinking right here and now? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of head shaking. Okay, so I have a motion, seconded, no further comments from the dais, our staff. Dallas, we're going to go to public comment. We have 2 minutes. We have 2-minute time limit for public comment, and we'll have a clock. Again, there should be a number coming through on your screen if you're on YouTube. Dial that number, and there's a little hand signal at the bottom. You can raise your hand, and we will get to you. If you ask questions during your 2-minute comment that take us time to answer, I'll jot the questions down, and then we'll try our best to answer them. But the comment time is not necessarily a time for a discussion or a debate. We'll listen to your comments, and we'll take your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. And we do have a couple of comments and questions that have come in through our Q&A. Dallas, do we have anybody in the waiting room? Okay, let's go to the Q&A while we give some time. And the first question is, how will the fines be enforced with face masks? And I'm not sure. I'm not going to even try to pronounce that name. I apologize. I think the answer to that has again been fluid. When the face mask ordinance first came out from the county, they were clear that there would be no fines, that it would be an educational enforcement. The way that order got written up, though, it got written up as a 2nd-degree misdemeanor. I've heard, I have many messages and phone calls about people being threatened with that. I don't believe anybody at this point has been given a fine or arrested for a face mask. I'm very aware of the, is that my feedback, Dallas? I'm very aware of the hostility that this ordinance has created. I get daily messages about people who've been accosted, harassed at stores for wearing a mask or for not wearing a mask. So, I think we've seen the stories nationwide that this issue has created. I do know that there are a lot of people out there with anxiety, with claustrophobia, with respiratory problems that have a hard time with masks. So the latest from the BOCC is still that they will not ticket or fine people. That's my understanding. But I think that the technical answer to that question is it's still a punishable offense with either a ticket or potentially jail time. So it really depends on the municipality that you're in, I'm not sure how to. So I guess I'm just not sure how to answer that question. If the manager has any inside information, I know the policies from the BOCC is that it's going to be educational. I think Gainesville may have a different take on it. They seem to have take the skate park with mulch incident. They seem to have taken a much stricter role here in enforcement. Okay, and this is my problem. Is there something Oh, Scott, can you stop unmuting yourself? Thank you.
Well, I'd like to comment on what you just said or the question.
Okay. You're trying to unmute yourself on purpose. I can't see your face here. If you've been trying to get my attention, I apologize. Let me see if I can scroll through and. Okay, Scott, go ahead. This is about the fines and the tickets.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I need a tutorial on the raise your hand function from Dallas somewhere along the way. I apologize that I'm not using the proper methodology. The fining section. So from a legal standpoint, Mr. Mayor, I have to give you what the law says. How the law is enforced by our sheriff or the directive perhaps that the county gives to the sheriff. If they say, look, we want you to do a citation, educational citation process in enforcement. We don't want you to actually make any arrests. We don't want you to provide citations. That's a different thing. So, but I have to look at the way the order is written and then give you that answer. So this is found in paragraph 14 of the order, and it says the county shall enforce the first violation of section 4 of this emergency order through a fine of $125 to the violator. The second violation of Section 4 of this emergency order shall be subject to a fine of $250 to the violator. All subsequent violations under Section 48 of this order shall constitute a Class 5 violation under Article 2, Chapter 24, Letcher County Code of Ordinances, requiring a mandatory court appearance and subject to a fine not to exceed $500. All other remedies available at law or equity, including injunction, remain available to the county even after issuance of a citation. Municipalities may enforce this order as provided by Florida law and municipal code. The language in the executive order from the governor is very similar to that. I'm not going to repeat it or read it because it is in fact very similar to the enforcement provisions of the county. It's enforced as second, as you stated, I think, Mr. Mayor, it's enforced as a second degree misdemeanor. I would be remiss if I didn't advise, as I started my earlier advice to the city, that we have a statutory framework that is provided for the state of Florida. The statutory framework under 252 specifically allows the county to enact the orders like we've talked about. It does not provide for a municipal opt-out or exemption. So if somebody chooses to follow the resolution that we're putting in place and enforce, technically speaking, and under the plain language of the county's order, then that would subject that person, even in the city of Newberry, and even if we pass this resolution, to the fines that under the regimen that I just stated. So I don't want somebody to necessarily rely on the action that we're taking and say that absolves me from possible fining by the county or and the stepped up process that would occur. I think it would be improper if I didn't put that at least in the record this evening. So I just want to make that point clear to any of the citizens that may be watching this or looking at this.
Thank you for that, Scott. And if that's the case, at least our residents know that their city will be there with them to help defend their rights. Okay, we have other comments. And I'm gonna read this one out loud. I would like to think that people should be allowed to wear or not wear a mask. If there needs to be a restriction, state that certain hours will require masks, i.e. grocery stores masks required from 8 to 9, 5 to 6, something like that. This will allow those who want others to wear it, and should allow some protection if that allows people to feel better about a mask being worn, not so much by them, but by others. And I take the Jason Levy's comment to heart. I think there've always been options that the county had available to them, and I think that they chose the right option when it came to the masks yesterday morning. They set a baseline that was a strong recommendation that I would echo. I strongly recommend, like Commissioner Coleman has said, he wears a mask. Commissioner Farnworth wears a mask. When I'm unable to socially distance, I wear a mask. They set that baseline, and any municipality could have gone stricter. Instead, one municipality decided to exert its power over the BOCC to exert power over 8 other municipalities not under their control. And that's really, for me, again, it's the process here that fell down yesterday, that collapsed yesterday. It's not the face mask issue itself, it's the lens by which we have seen it. So this comment is again reiterating that same concept, that there are other options here that we're not choosing to give a chance to play out. I have one other comment from an email that we received from Steve Miller, who just wants to point out that the studies show now that where counties and states that have shut down versus not shut down, the fatality rate and the sickness rate is basically the same. And he just asked me to make that point. So again, Newberry's not trying to get into the data wars here, or I believe my doctor over the other political party's doctor. We're trying to keep politics out of this and just trying to seek clarity. But I was asked to share that, and so I have. Dallas, do we have anyone in the waiting room with their hand up now?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any other public comment? And again, we've got about a 30-second delay, so just going to make sure. That we've given plenty of time for the public to weigh in. Dallas, is our waiting room still empty?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I think that's been about 30 seconds or so. So if we have no further public comment, the motion on the floor is to authorize staff to write a companion emergency order to mirror the governor's order for my signature tomorrow at the soonest possible time that can be accomplished. And then we've given direction here tonight for legal to send some communications to the governor's office about what's happening here, try to seek some clarification on the governor's stance on some of these things, and also to do some research on the decisions of the court cases, not only here in Alachua County, but around the country, and be able to report back on Tuesday. Have I summed up everyone's homework assignments? Awesome. Okay, Dallas, if we still have no one in the waiting room and no hands up, I'm going to move for a roll call. Okay. Commissioner Coleman.
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Commissioner Norfleet.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0, unanimous, and that takes us to comments. City Manager.
Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No comments to speak of. I'll just let the commission know that the city will be opening its City Hall lobby and for the public beginning Tuesday next week with certain social distancing requirement restrictions. We've also began coordinating the reinitiation of certain youth recreation programs, and Little Red Schoolhouse, which has been working just mostly from home, will be open to the public again beginning next Tuesday.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mr. Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, we do not have anything under our report.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Madam Clerk.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And Commission, let's start at the top. Commissioner Coleman, you have any comments?
I have nothing.
Thank you. Commissioner Farnsworth.
I have none.
Thank you. Commissioner McKinley.
No, thank you.
Commissioner Norfleet.
I have.
Commissioner Martin. I don't have any as well, except to again thank the commission and staff for pulling this meeting together. I hope that we have achieved the peace of mind that our businesses and residents hoped we would here tonight. And I thank the board for working together in a unified way. I look forward to working in a unified way with the governor. And I still hope that moving forward, we can find a way to work in a unified measure with the rest of the governing bodies in our county. With that, the meeting is adjourned.